Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to MoJOE Studio. I am JOE McCARTHY with my good friends, partners in crime, amigos, compadres, Mr. Rick Olson and Mr. Jon Wierauch. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Very good. We're starting over. I just screwed up.
Okay, right on. All right, take two. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the live show with MoJOE Studio. I am JOE McCARTHY with my good friends, compadres, partners in crime, Mr. Rick Olson and Jon Wierauch. Now, how are you, fellas?
Take it, John.
I am great. Honestly, having a really good time here in Michigan. How are you, Mr. Rick Olson?
I'm doing great. Lori and I closed on our house this week. We are moving on. Life is good. The weather's gorgeous in Northwest Wisconsin, and very excited to be back with you guys tonight.
I made a note before we went live that Rick was wearing his Hawaiian shirt, which is not uncommon for Rick. As soon as spring has sprung, so has his wardrobe. And Rick, what did you tell me about your friend? Tell me that story again.
Well, I've got a great friend named Lauren, and Lauren, if you're listening, I'm going to be talking about you now. I brought Lauren to Hawaii. He walked into the Tommy Bahama outlet with me, and he said, you know, it's time for a new wardrobe. And he purchased 37 items from Tommy Bahama. They were so thrilled that they shipped all of that to him and to Lauren. When he returned from his trip, he opened his package, and there was a letter on the top that said, congratulations, you are the biggest customer we've ever had at Tommy Bahama. So friends, to all of you, if you want a new wardrobe, Tommy Bahama outlet in Honolulu, highly recommend it. And if you buy 38 items, you might get the letter that says you are now the biggest customer they've ever had. So there you go.
That's the one to shoot for, 38.
That's right. Honey, I didn't want to buy 38, but I wanted to be number one.
If I received a letter that said I was their biggest customer, I'd start weighing myself and think I better go on a diet.
Yeah, probably. Well, if you do grow and become a big customer, nothing like a Hawaiian shirt to take care of all that. So
that's right. It's very forgiving.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
go ahead, John.
You remember back at speaker school, which has been, we started that like almost a year and a half ago now.
Right.
We were talking about those Be Kind Hawaiian shirts that we had at the Franklin Credit Union.
Yes.
And Joe said he wanted one. I finally mailed it to him about 3 weeks ago, and it took him about 3 weeks to get there. He gets it, and then it's too big.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Well,
there's room for two of me in there.
There's a way to fill out that shirt, Joe. Just
yes,
stop at the bakery every morning and fit back into that shirt.
I'm not sure my wife would sign off on that plan.
Well, guys, I have one as well. So some night we could do our Frankenmuth Credit Union Be Kind Hawaiian shirts. We could do a little theme thing some night. Right. Great.
Hey, I did want to acknowledge the noise in the background. So I am in my backyard, which is my studio, and just over the fence that you see behind me here is a neighbor doing a roofing project. So you can hear the hammering and the sawing, and occasionally a generator turns on. It's also trash day today, so you might hear the trash trucks go by. All of that to say, we are building real-life ambience right into our podcast.
I like it. Your neighbor is being productive tonight, and so are you. So this is a very exciting night. Joe and John and I have been talking about our plans moving forward. We have so many great guests still lined up that we're going to interview. But I thought it would be really good if we took a little time starting tonight to just really get to know who Joe and John really are. You've been enjoying them. They add so much to this podcast. Their insights are fabulous. But who is Joe McCARTHY? Who is Jon Wierauch? So tonight, Joe, we are putting the spotlight on you. It is Get to Know Joe McCARTHY Night.
Right.
So we're going to get the unedited version, the real Joe McCARTHY, and this is the night that we're going to do that. So, Joe, you are an awesome host for this thing. You're kind of a podcasting whiz, and we sure appreciate working with you. But you've been so kind and gracious to so many tonight. It's our privilege to turn the spotlight fully on you and let the world see who this Joe McCARTHY guy really is. You all right with that, Joe?
Bring it on, fellas. Bring it on.
All right. Jon, I'm going to let you jump in. Give me your thoughts. What do you think about a Joe McCarthy night?
Oh, he's in the Rick Olson hot seat. We're gonna make you sweat.
Yeah.
No, I'm so excited to do this. This is really cool. We talk about this a lot. Joe and I, in fact, we just had a separate podcast a few days ago, and we love to tell the story how we've never actually met in person. I speak to Joe as much or more than any other friend that I have, and we dig in deep every time we talk. I swear we learn something new from each other every single time we engage in conversation. It is almost comforting when I see a text come from the Joe, Rick, and Jon group text on my phone or get an email. It's just a pleasure. It's been so great getting to know Joe and staying connected with them ever since the Rick Olson Speaker School that we went through. And we're hoping one day, possibly in Minneapolis, that we will be able to meet in person finally.
I think we're on a collision course with destiny. I think it's going to happen. I think the three men, one room, one time, it's going to be awesome. Jon, I've spent so much time with you over these last 6-7 years in Frankenmuth. I have loved every minute of it. Joe, we have had so many great times in the past, although we took a hiatus there for 30 years. But now we're trying to make up for lost time. And thanks to technology, we're staying connected on a very regular basis, but it's going to be quite a celebration when we all get in the same room, same time. And it is coming soon. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for those that have just tuning in for the first time, I want to just peel back the curtain just a little bit. Jon and I and Rick have really gelled together as a team. Didn't necessarily see this coming even a year ago, but based on our conversations, our relationship, and as COVID unfolded and then refolded, we've really found a great synergy between the three of us. And we've even kind of put a moniker on what will be a podcast to be released in the near future called 3Gen, because we represent three generations of mindset, of leadership, of experience, Rick and I and Jon. And so we really think there's a strength in that, a strength in numbers, a strength in perspective. And like Jon has mentioned already, we often in our conversations learn something new from each other that none of us had even considered up to that point. And we all have this revelation where we're like, this is good stuff. And so we really look forward to the opportunity to meet new people, to interview old people, to get to know great leaders and what makes them tick and why, what did they learn along the way, both good and bad, from their strengths and their weaknesses. So I just want to plant that seed that the 3Gen podcast is soon to be released, and it's going to be rich with some really great conversations.
It's been an incredible journey doing these recordings. Again, we're about to unleash this on the world, and can't wait. But even what we're doing tonight, I'm going to encourage you folks to be thinking about that sort of thing with some of your dear friends. Is it possible that you have some really good friends and you've never stopped to just really sit down and find out who they really are and what their journey is really like and what are the great life lessons they learned? So we're going to be doing that with our friend Joe tonight. May it inspire you to maybe dig a little deeper with some of those terrific relationships that surround your life as well.
Absolutely.
So Joe, let's dive in. And again, we want everybody to know who Joe McCarthy is. Would you share a few highlights just of your life, of your journey? Again, we enjoy your insights week after week, but let's go back a long ways. Talk to us about some highlights from your life and your journey.
All right. Well, to jump way back to the very beginning, I was born to a family that I've never met. So I was put up for adoption at birth, and up until maybe a year ago, I had no idea who they were, how many of them there were, who was I related to genetically. And at 3 weeks old, I was adopted by my parents, my adoptive family, who had a daughter of their own at that point, and then due to circumstances couldn't have any more children biologically. So they prayed, and God connected me with them and them with me. And then another boy, my little brother, 2 years later. So I was raised in that family, and thankfully it was, even though in a time when adoption wasn't quite as common, my family just celebrated that. To them, I was an answer to their prayers. So I used to tease my sister, you know what, they're stuck with you, but they chose me. And then
I
my
like
sister,
it.
of course, would quip back. Yeah, but they can send you back at any time. So
That's
siblings
great.
do, right? Yeah. And so, but I grew up in Billings, Montana, and it was a great place, very wholesome place where we could get out and ride our bikes and do a lot of independent things as kids and experiment and learn how to jump off barns into hay bales and throw cow pies at each other at my grandma's farm. And I was out in the fields with my dad doing hay bales, and my dad was also a mechanic by trade, and so I learned the hard way that the two things I did not want to be when I grew up was to be a farmer or a mechanic, because it was way too much work and not enough pay.
Yeah.
And my dad takes great pride in that I actually learned that. He's like, well, at least I taught you something valuable, right?
There you go.
Yeah. But I grew up in a family where my mom and dad, they split up when I was about 7, and my mom was really searching for spiritual grounding and some help from above, and so she got us into church as a family. And my relationship with God started really early in my life, and I'm so glad it did, because for me it has very little to do with religion, religiosity, ritual, even theology, because for me it really is about relationship. When things were imploding in my family, unstable, uncertain, I knew I could close the door and talk with God, and He was right there, and I could feel His presence and be encouraged that, hey, I'm not alone. And God sees me and loves me and will carry me through whatever it is that I'm facing. And so you can argue with my theology all you want, but you can't argue with my experience. And I can tell you from experience that God is love, and He has demonstrated that to me over and over and over again. So fast forward in my life, I got to my junior year.
Time out.
Yes, sir.
We want to jump in, talk a little bit about this, because
Okay, you bet.
I love your adoption story, and your perspective on it. And we have had the privilege of interviewing some folks where adoptions were in a really big part of their family and what has happened in their life. And it's been great having you on this end as we're interviewing to talk about what a very special thing that is. And Jon and I admire you so much for your perspective on it, how healthy all your relationships are, the soundness of thought that you have as far as relationship and life circumstances, and discovering the very best that can come out of an adverse situation. So to be adopted at birth, to have new parents now in that environment, and then something really didn't go right in that relationship and that one broke apart. And yet we see you today, loving people, upbeat about life, about family, about others. And so we have a world of respect for you and your perspective. And I think life circumstances have taught you some really deep and powerful things that go all the way back to the very beginnings of JOE McCARTHY.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to echo that too. I was going to stop you too, anyways, Joe. So I think what's so impressive to me, it's been a bit of a rocky road, I suppose, for you. You have such an optimistic view on it, and you're not. I know today in this podcast we're not going to get into every little detail, but the what you've all experienced from such a young age and that connection with God maintained. I feel like it would be so easy, and I've met people that have had difficult upbringing or whatever, had parents divorced at a young age, whatever the case may be, and it's almost a really easy reason to drift away from God and say like, okay, well, He's not taking care of me, or whatever the case may be. And that from everything you've told me, and you've told me, we've talked about this a few times, it was just solid. And I don't know if this is a question or if it's just an observation, but it's impressive that the strength and that solid relationship you've had with God all throughout.
Just to speak on the adoption thing there too, it was just after my parents split up that we went to a concert, and which is important to me. Music is such a big part of my life. We went to a concert where a bunch of young people on stage singing these enthusiastic songs about how much they love God and how much God loves them. And at the end, they made this presentation about, hey, would you like to start a relationship with God where He dwells in you, lives in you, right? Is with you all the time, is your best friend, all these great metaphors. And I had grown up in a Catholic church up to that point where I knew a lot about God. And, you know, I was a little bit freaked out by the cross up on the up on the wall, the blood dripping off, and we had all these, you know, taboos about what you could and couldn't do during communion. So I knew all the prayers, and I knew that there was a God, but it was very much at a distance. There's a lot of separation. So when I hear this conversation that, hey, God loves you and wants you to be your kid, and he wants to actually adopt you into his family, well, man, suddenly that makes sense. Adoption, I know what that's about. And I know that's good stuff. And so that means I get all the rights and all the honors and all the responsibilities of being one of God's kids. I'm in, right? So I'm racing forward. Sign me up for that, right? Because adoption is the best thing in the world.
So you're the leader in the group. Jon and I have been adopted once. You've been adopted twice. So you got one up on us there, Joe.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Wonderful perspective. So let's fast forward then. Let's go further into your life. What happened later in life? What were some of the things that happened that caused you to think like a leader? That brought about leadership thoughts and concepts to you? What transpired, Joe?
Yeah. To jump a little bit off of Jon's observation, you know, I knew several people who did come from traumatic backgrounds and broken homes who found solace in much more destructive things, you know, drugs or gangs or, you know, self-destructive behaviors. For me, I ended up finding good feedback and positive role models and affirmation from sports and music. And so it turned out to be those were as important to me as anything in my life, that I hooked up with coaches who saw my potential and gave me encouragement, and I was part of a community, part of a team, you know, I had a reason to give my all to something. And then I learned first piano and then trumpet. And I didn't have trumpet lessons because we couldn't afford them, but I just fell in love with the instrument because it made a lot of noise, right? And I just could make it go for it, right? Could make people's hair go backwards on their head too hard enough. So I just put everything into that. And again, it was the teachers, the conductors, you know, the band instructors who then would give me the affirmation that I needed to say, Joe, you've got great potential, stick with it, you're doing great. The things that I needed to hear that I wasn't necessarily hearing at home or other places, I got it from my coaches, from my youth pastors, from my teachers. And so I just want to say how grateful I am that that's the direction that I headed. And I can't take any credit for that, but I can certainly say, wow, thank God that I got what I needed in such a positive way. And then so athletics and music really inform my life, you know, the power of teamwork, the power of community, and what a great leader can do for an individual and as a result for the entire group.
And I definitely want to dig deeper into the leadership side of things, but some of your music stories and the traveling you did, and I know you've been to Frankenmuth before, maybe even before I was born, I don't know, and all the way to the Vatican, I believe. So please tell us all your musical adventures.
Yeah. So I like to say that I could play trumpet in any language of the world, which technically is true, right? Because
right.
It's the same language. Music is a universal language. But because I was able to excel at trumpet, it really became my passport, and I used that to launch me into groups that were traveling first across the United States. And so I've performed in every state of the Union, and then took me all over the world. I've been in 30 countries, primarily as a gospel musician, as part of different gospel groups. And in 1990, as you've alluded to, in my travels, we spent 7 weeks in India, and while we were in Calcutta, we got to do a private concert with Mother Teresa, and then sat at her feet, which are a whole nother story, as she imparted her wisdom to us. And then just a couple of weeks later, we flew out of India, went to Luxembourg, and then to Italy, where in the Vatican, in the Pope's chapel, we performed for one of his masses. And then afterwards, he came just within 3 rows of me. And, you know, because of my Catholic background early on, I was dying to meet the Pope. And I was like reaching through the rows of people in front of me, almost pushing them over, hoping that perhaps I could touch the ring, right? And I was this close. But I think I mean, of course, traveling is a great experience and education to itself. But I saw the power of music and how it transforms both me as an individual, my group, and then the people that we performed for. And then I also got to see firsthand servant leadership can look like Mother Teresa, where it's poverty, and it can look like the Pope, where it's surrounded with opulence. And both of them had these great hearts that wanted to serve the people that they were around. And I just took great courage and cues from them that, whatever I thought leadership looked like, it has nothing to do with the exterior world. It has what's going on inside their heart.
The Marriott Corporation uses a wonderful quote that goes like this: "The world is a book, and those who do not travel only read one page." I love that quote. I'm a traveler. I will be the rest of my days. I have also ventured around this world. Joe, I'm so happy for you that you've had the privilege of seeing the big world. All 50 states, a remarkable achievement. 30 countries, a remarkable achievement. Mother Teresa, the Pope, your life has been blessed by so many great expanding experiences. Just that whole thing, it does something to one's thought process. You think bigger thoughts when you're exposed on that level. Now, we're going to explore that a little bit, but I do want to ask you one question about Mother Teresa and the Pope. Did you hit any wrong notes while playing for Mother Teresa and the Pope? Do you remember any misstep? Did you come in early? Did you hit a wrong note? Do you remember anything like that in the audience of those people?
Well, I got to tell you, in the presence of Mother Teresa and the Pope, you were so in awe. It's like a surreal experience, right? It's an out-of-body experience. Like at my wedding reception. I know we had a wedding reception, but I don't remember who was there or how long they were there or who I met. It's this big blur. Same thing in the presence of Mother Teresa and the Pope. I know I was there, but as for the specific details, it's all a blur, right?
That's good. So then you don't remember any big, ooh, I came in one measure too early.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
All right. Could you talk a little bit about the impact you think that it has had on your life, seeing the big world, seeing the United States, seeing the world, so many different experiences? How has that in itself impacted Joe McCarthy?
Yeah, I would say, on so many levels, but one of the things that I'm acutely aware of is how it expands your heart, because we got to spend time in Zimbabwe and then in South Africa on a mission trip. And so, and here's one of the great things about my travels. Very few of them were tourist style travels where I was in a hotel and I did all the touristy things and then I was back in the hotel. On most of my travels, I was with the people who lived there. I was eating their food. They were serving us. I was in their churches, and helping them right there where they lived. And so I didn't get the sanitized version of each country. I got the actual version. And I got to tell you, my heart, every place I went, my heart expanded that, man, my first 2 weeks in India, I was there 7 weeks. My first 2 weeks were super difficult. The culture shock was overwhelming. And I thought I was prepared. I studied cultural anthropology in college, so I should be like the guy ready to travel. But everything was so foreign, the smells, the sights, the people, the transportation, everything, that for the first 2 weeks, I was just disoriented. But by week 7, I didn't want to leave. I was like, these people are beautiful. I love them. I'm so glad I got to meet them. And that's everywhere I traveled. Now, when I see newspaper articles about what's happening in Zimbabwe or China or Mexico or the places that I've been, I actually care. I care that these people are in pain or that there's been a natural disaster or that there's a dictator that's oppressing them. Whereas it would be very easy. And I can even say in countries that I haven't been to, I'm far less interested to see what's happening there. So it's expanded my heart to be far less judgmental and far more inclusive. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
And to build on that with the traveling experience, that's fantastic. Everything you just said there too. One thing that I noticed, I spent a semester in Spain, and every day when I walked to school, I walked right along this 2,000-year-old aqueduct, Roman aqueduct, and it put things into perspective. At that young age, I don't even know how old I was, young 20s or something like that. It's just like, oh my gosh, like our country's only been around a few hundred years. Yep. I'm curious if you had a lot of those like realization moments and maybe how that might have impacted you.
Yeah, I would say Greece was one of those places, right? So you're at the Acropolis and you're thinking of all the history there that in your mind up to that point was just like mythology. It was a great story, but it didn't seem like real. And then you're standing on Mars Hill where St. Paul preached this famous message to the unknown God, and there's a marker there that says this is where Paul stood. And you're like, what? No way, no way am I in that same place, right? This is real. So you're right. It suddenly, it makes the world smaller in a sense, but in a really good way, because you feel like I'm part of the global community. I'm part of the great historical story of humanity. And it actually kind of gives you a little tiny glimpse of God sees us all as one, as opposed to all different countries and colors and creeds and all that kind of stuff.
I had the privilege of doing my first overseas trip as a 17-year-old. I went to Panama, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And coming out of it, my wish was I wish I could take every teenager in America overseas. I wish I could take everyone to a country that knows hardship. I wish I could give every teenager in America that perspective. Changes everything when you see others. A few years ago, down in Tanzania, the 5th poorest country on the planet, and yet perhaps the most joyous group of people that I've ever been around. And you can see what really matters for these folks. And for them, they have nothing except they have God and they have family, and that's enough for them, and they're very happy. Yep. And so I wish I could bring every teenager in America overseas. I'm so glad you went, Joe, and I think it has had a huge impact on your life.
You know, one other great benefit, as anybody who travels overseas will tell you, is how much appreciation you get when you come home for what you've got. You realize in the perspective of the world and this perspective of poverty and all the different things that people have to live in, the conditions they live in, that I have it really well, right? I took for granted all the blessings that I have as an American citizen, growing up with my family and all those stuff. But man, you get off that plane after you're overseas and you kiss the ground and you just thank God that he picked you to be here, right? And you don't take that for granted anymore.
No, you won the lottery of life, you know, being raised in America. Just incredibly blessed. Well, Joe, let's continue to talk about your journey, leadership growth within you, leadership perspective. What made you so interested in leadership? I know you're all in today, but what were some of those formulating things that gave you some background, some principles, some interest in really diving deep into leadership?
Yeah, I'd say one of the early formative moments, which is still vivid in my memory as if it happened yesterday, was my first job out of college. First I traveled, and then I came back to the school that I graduated from, which is then called Southern California College. Now it's Vanguard University. And I'd become friends with the president, Wayne Crace. And so I was coming off the road, and I called Wayne and I said, hey, I don't have a career path. I don't even have a job. Is there something you could give me to do just while I kind of figure out where my next steps are in life? Because as much as I would like to travel for the rest of my life, it doesn't pay very well, and I'm not sure my family and friends want to support me forever. And so, he got it, and he says, Joe, I've got nothing but respect for you. And he said, in fact, the timing's perfect because I've always wanted to do an administrative internship, but I never had the budget or the right person. And now I've got the budget, and I think you're the right person. Would you spend 2 years with us learning all the facets of Christian higher education and see if there's a career there for you? And because we'll benefit from having you on the team, and you'll benefit from the experience, and I won't have to pay you very much because you're brand new, right out of college. And I'm like, hey, that's a win-win, right? So, but the best part of that was that he would take me to lunch on a regular basis and talk to me less like a boss and more like a father figure, and just pour out wisdom into my life and ask me, how are you doing? And what can I do to help you grow and to learn? But the conversation, the really poignant conversation, which still kind of affects who I am and why I do what I do today, is he said, Joe, I want to tell you something, and you probably won't have context for this now, but you will as you grow. He said, if I treat my employees just as a paycheck, if they come and they do their services, and I just pay them, and that's the relationship. He said, basically, I treat them as if they are prostitutes, and I'm a pimp. And of course, this is a president of a Christian college. And I'm like, oh my, what did he? Did anybody? Shh, oh boy.
Right. Yep.
I was shocked. And he said, think about this, Joe. He said, and again, you don't have a lot of critics, but I can't just trade money for services, or I'm just using people, right? He said, my job as a leader has a lot to do with stewardship of human potential, human resources. My job is to make sure that they grow and they have everything that they need and that they learn and that they're better people by the end of their employment under my leadership than when they walked in. Otherwise, I'm just trading money for services. And I was like, that is profound, right? That just, yes. And that's serious. And I don't think I even understood why or how that was going to play out, but that really set me on a path where I was determined from that time on that if I'm ever in a leadership role, or if I'm actually ever an employee, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be satisfied with a leader who trades money for services, because either I'm the prostitute or I'm the pimp, and that's no good. That's not what God wants.
I love it. I do know Wayne Crace. I am so happy that you got to spend so much time with him. What a great person to be speaking into your life. One of the things, there's several things I like about that brief story too. One of them is I love the initiative. That wasn't Wayne Crace reaching out to you saying we have a spot. That was JOE McCARTHY knocking on the door saying, could you create something for a guy like me? And that tells me so much about your life, about your leadership, and the initiative that it takes to be a person who makes things happen. You can't sit back and wait for your life to happen. Life is one of those do-it-yourself deals. You've got to make your life happen. Jesus said, you have not because you ask not. The only reason they didn't have is because they weren't asking. And so his message constantly was ask, ask, ask. And I love the fact that you showed the initiative, you reached out, created a path and a plan, didn't know where it would lead, but it opened a door. So I give you great kudos for taking initiative and going after what you wanted.
Couldn't agree more on that. And I love how it's almost tapping into the concept of the internal versus external locus of control, right? That you're either the type of person who thinks, oh, it all happens to me, and either I'm gonna have some good luck, I'm gonna have some bad luck, but I'm just kind of blowing in the wind here and let the wind take me where it will. Or you have the internal, I am part of this. I can decide where I go, what decisions I make. I can put my right foot forward and then my left, and continue on. And that they, there's study after study shows when you have that perspective on life, you're going to be more successful in the workplace, but even more successful in terms of just happiness and joy in your life.
I need to give a little bit of backstory to that particular moment too, to that internship. When I was first came as a new student at Vanguard, Southern California College, they had a chapel service where they said at the very end, hey, if you have anything you would like some prayer for, our faculty and staff will be standing at the front and they will pray with you. And so I didn't have any particular prayer needs at the moment, but I thought, you know what, there's the president. I hadn't met him yet. There's the president. I bet he's could use somebody to pray for him, right? So I stood in line, took my turn, and I got to him, and he says, how can I pray for you? And I said, I'm good. How can I pray for you? And he was like shocked. He was like,
yeah.
I said, if you're the president of a college, I can't only imagine the stress you're under. How can I pray for you? And it took him a while to wrap his mind around that. He says, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that in one of these lines, right? And quite honestly, he'll tell you now. He'll say, the reason I didn't hesitate to hire you into that internship when you came out for the road after you graduated from me was because you prayed for me rather than asking me to pray for you at that moment when I hadn't even met you yet. He said, I became a raving fan of JOE McCARTHY in that moment. And, and he's been my advocate ever since.
I don't know if I want to call you smart or a brown noser or what, but that is genius. And knowing you the way I do, I know it really truly came from your heart. A person caring about, Rick always says it's lonely at the top, right? You're in a leadership position, and that's fantastic, Joe. That's the first time I heard that story. That's awesome.
That is a great story. Well, John Maxwell, so many great words of wisdom. One of them is you have to touch a person's heart before you touch their head. You will not get their head until you get their heart. And Wayne Crace understood that. And that's how he lived his life. He wanted their head, but he got their heart first. And once you get their heart, it's amazing how much of them they will give. So he understood some brilliant concepts about life, about productivity, about ministry, about human dynamics. And I mean, it's a message I'm teaching all across America. In fact, I'm doing some work right now in law enforcement, and law enforcement's at a very interesting time where it's a collision of cultures. The old style of law enforcement is top-down command. You'll do so because I said so. And that's the way it was for a long time. But every young officer coming into law enforcement today is coming up in an engaged, empowered world. That's what they see. That's what they hear. That's what they read about. That's what's social media. That's what they're expecting. And so we have this collision of cultures. And so I'm doing a significant amount of work right now with law enforcement as we're trying to find a path forward, kind of with the changing of the guard of those two philosophies in the workplace. Yes. And I can tell you where they have embraced empowerment and engagement, they're getting heroic efforts out of their officers. And where they're not, things kind of bogged down. So I'm so pleased that early on you were exposed to that model and style of leadership. To me, that is the path to go down as you're dealing with people.
Now, there's pros and cons, of course, to having such a great leader and role model earlier in your career, because then when you move on to other jobs, which I did, of course, throughout my life, I worked for plenty of bosses who did not have that same empathy and compassion at the heart of their leadership. Oftentimes they were either uninformed or insecure, or who knows what the issues were. And I'm not a psychoanalyzer, but I certainly could tell you that on the employee end, even in volunteer positions, if it was about them and it had to always be their decision and always had to be their idea and they had to be the smartest person in the room, it was a completely different experience for me, who just wanted to be part of the team and help things succeed, than when I was working for someone who's like, how can I empower you? How can I give you everything you need to succeed? Knowing full well that if me as the line worker, I'm doing my best, then the whole place wins, right? It's a win for everybody, including the external clients.
Right. No, the ones who tap into the creativity of their people, they're the big winners. Tom Peters said our number one failure in business is to not tap the creativity of our employees. And it is sad how much untapped potential there is across America. But the wise ones, the wise leaders, know that they are in the people building business. And that is the number one thing that we've asked them to do as a leader: step in, build great people, multiply yourself through building great people all around you. And Joe, you haven't always said that, but I'm glad you've had enough of that to give you a taste and go, that's my path for the future, to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
you can learn. Go ahead, John, you first.
No, actually, I had to go on that path. I have a separate path I was going to take us on anyways.
No, I was going to say you can learn from good leaders as much as you can learn from bad leaders, right?
That's right.
Here's what I want to be when I grow up, and here's what I certainly don't want to be. Just like you do with a good dad or a bad dad or stepfather or whatever. So thankfully, I was smart enough and self-aware enough to say, okay, here's some attributes that I will emulate if and when I'm in a leadership position, and here's some things that I definitely will avoid when that time comes.
Yeah. Wayne Crace. Going back to Wayne Cordero, another Wayne. Wayne Cordero is a terrific pastor. And one of my favorite things he said, I have 400 mentors. He said they're all dead. And he's talking about biblical characters. I have 400 mentors, they're all dead. They all teach me something. Some of them teach me how to live. Some of them teach me how not to live, but they all teach me something. And I think that's a great life perspective. You can learn from everyone and everything, I'm going to do that. I'm never going to do that. And those are both very valuable lessons.
For sure.
All right.
Absolutely. And this may be my experience. I've heard other people say this too. I actually think you almost learn more from people that are a bad example. It's easier to pick up on that stuff, right? And I was through my early professional career, I honestly didn't have. I was more on the other side, like, wow, those are a bunch of things that I'm not going to do if I ever get in a leadership position. Yeah. And it's really eye opening for sure.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, good. I was going to say, I think you need both. You guys all know that I'm the both and guy. As soon as there's like two competing ideas, I'm like, well, what if we can marry them both, right?
Right.
So, but I do think in the absence of good leaders, you don't really know what you should do. You might know what you should not do, right, but you might not know what's the difference. What is the right thing? So I think I really benefit from having both. Is that I've seen the example that I can follow, and I've seen the example I don't want to follow. But at least I know what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I think you need both really to find that sweet spot.
It's important to have that keen eye on it too, because that I think it back to what I was just saying. There actually was a manager that I had way back at that same time, and I don't even think I fully grasped all the great things she was doing, and I don't think I even fully respected it, appreciated it. And then all of a sudden I find myself in a leadership position. I'm like, oh wait, that's how she did things. I'm going to do things that way,
Yeah.
And I almost wish I had been more keen on it as it was happening, because I probably would have been more appreciative. So maybe that's some good advice for everyone, is just focus on the good managers, focus on the bad ones. Don't take them for granted. Don't underappreciate. That's interesting stuff right there. So what I was going to ask, and I'm just curious, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on you here, Joe, but you're so keen into the leadership concepts. You have a master's degree in organizational development. Really, and we are very like-minded, and we have those similar degrees. And but one thing that we're different on is that at one point you gravitated to this marketing and almost like branding. And it's funny, we have 3 generations here, and if we were to kind of write up a little profile on each of us, one of our profiles would say, fantastic at social media and at making logos and branding, and you'd probably think it's the millennial, but it's certainly not me. That is that's your strength.
Right.
When did that come to be? When did you pivot that way?
Yeah, so when I got done with that 2-year internship at Vanguard right out of my travels, the position that opened up at the time at the college was director of communications, which included basic graphic design, marketing, public relations. Now, I was already good with words, so that was a natural position for me, but I didn't have any experience in graphic design. I'm a creative guy. I love music. I love the arts, but I didn't have any specific training. And so I actually told Wayne Grace, I said, hey, I'm really attracted to this position, but I don't have the experience. And he says, that's okay. I don't have enough to pay somebody with experience. So how about we'll do this? I'll put you in that position, and I'll train you how to do it if that's something you really want to learn. And then as your skills grow, so will your salary grow. And he held to his word. And so I jumped in, and knowing nothing, I got connected with a mentor, a friend of mine named Chauncey Bays, and I would spend afternoons at his computer saying, how do you do this? I mean, I've got this great idea in my head, but how do you get it on the screen? And how do you manipulate it? And how do you use the tools? And he became one of my best friends and taught me all the skills of graphic design. So once I learned the creative skills and the creative tools, and then married it with my understanding of how to manipulate words and how to to communicate well, then it was a pretty natural growth there, and it turned out to be really the bulk of my career is marketing and communications and branding.
So we have an interesting theme developing tonight, Joe. You opened the door for yourself at Vanguard. You took the initiative. They didn't come to you. You went to them. You launched a career where you had no real training. So there's a lot of this make it happen kind of stuff going on, which I am very much attracted to. I think that's one of the greatest qualities a person can have, is this fearlessness that I don't know, but I'm going to figure that out. It's one of the things I admire about my wife, Lori, so much. She's absolutely tenacious. She will discover whatever she needs to. She will read, she will research, she will Google, she'll get to the bottom of it, and she will figure it out. And I love that kind of tenacity. But you've showed that. And as I travel around, many times I'll meet with an IT director of a multi-million or billion-dollar company who has no formal background in IT. They just had an interest and they went after it and they did what you did. They got in there, they dug, they learned, and now they're directing the entire IT program for these billion-dollar companies. That's something that I admired a great deal. So thanks for being that kind of a guy, fearless. I'm going after it. I'm going to make it happen.
Even this podcast is, I guess, an example of that too. And before April, I could spell the word podcast. I hadn't even really listened to any, certainly didn't know anything about how do you do it. But I got the bug, right? I thought, oh, this would be really cool. And I had a friend, Steve-O Hayes, who you both know, who did podcasting. So I had like 2 conversations with him. Steve-O, is this something I can do? Yeah, of course you can. So what do I need to know? And he kind of gave me the bird's eye view. And then within a few days, I'm launching a podcast, right? So I do have this desire to just go with it, even if I don't really know what I don't know. Actually, I take that as a strength, right? I'm pretty good with uncertainty, and I'm willing to take risks and learn as I go, course correct as I go, and that certainly has served me well over the years.
Well, it's been impressive. When I first met you during Rick's speaker school, I could just watch you in these Zooms, and I just see the ideas just firing, and it's just like you come to here, to here, and to here, and to here, and all of a sudden you've got all these ideas, and then we did get into a lot for a while, and then Rick asked us to join him on his Rick Olson seminars adventure, and then all of a sudden it's just like Joe is going to start a podcast, and he's got 3 different series going on, and I can't, like I said, it's like I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, man, you think I'd be the young ambitious guy here, but I can't keep up with Rick and Joe. They just keep going.
That's great. Well, there's a proverb that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I think we've all felt that in the relationship, just hanging out, sharing ideas. It does. It just brings the good stuff out in you. And sometimes the thought is, I got to up my game, man. I gotta bring it at a higher level, or I'm going to get left behind here in this world. So
exactly.
So Joe, I know we didn't talk about this, but is there a chance you could spend just a few minutes and give some great marketing thoughts, social media thoughts? A lot of our people who listen to us, that's an area where they know it's important. They know they would really like to be good at it. A lot of them aren't, but they're curious, and you have done so many great things. You've helped both Jon and I a great deal in that regard. Could you give us a Cliff's Notes version of any key thoughts that we should be thinking about marketing, branding, social media in the time that we live in?
Yeah, well, first of all, to kind of give a contrast, so I've known Rick for the longest time, and when I reignited this relationship with him last summer, he reminded me, which to me is still mind-blowing, that he's built this fabulous business where he's busier than he's ever been. He's traveling 50 weeks a year and could do more, but he has to turn down gigs. And he's got a website that's 20 years old and 0 social media, which is the antithesis of my entire life, right? That's the opposite of my career. And I just scratched my head going, how in the world? But of course, it's because Rick puts a priority on relationships. And I think there's this huge tie-in that gets lost in the mix, that people think marketing's a magic bullet. If I just do X, Y, Z, and I have this strategy and I have these tools, then marketing is going to bring in the clients. It's going to make my business grow. It's going to make me a social phenom or whatever they think it is. But they miss the fact that great marketing without relationships is, it's like not going to work. It's just a whole lot of noise. It's a whole lot of motion, but no action, right? But the opposite is true. You can actually build a fabulous business without any marketing, as Rick is good at, has proven to be true. So I love what Rick said. He said, what social media and marketing could do is accelerate the process. But you got to start with a rocket before you can accelerate it, right? And the rocket is, and the foundation is, the relationships. And so anytime I get to talk about marketing, I tell people, you got to start with the fact that you're talking to people and you're people. And if you can't connect on the people to people level, then all the other stuff is just flourish. And people, I mean, have such a savvy culture that gets marketed barrage every moment of their day that they can sniff out, the fake stuff in a second, the stuff that's overproduced, the stuff that has no substance. But if you find something that it grabs their heartstrings and they feel like they can either see themselves, there's a possibility there, right? This is what Disney does so well, is that people see the possibilities of themselves in the picture, and they just pull on those heartstrings because it's a people relationship.
Right. And
then you put all the marketing stuff over the top of it. Well, then you've got the rocket going, to the moon in a much shorter period of time.
Well, that goes right along with what Rick always says too, is you're not doing these things. You can't be doing these things. You can't be consulting. You can't be speaking just to be recognized. You can't throw a bunch of stuff out on social media just so you get a few views here and there. The goal has to be you're trying to inspire greatness. You're trying to inspire change. You're trying to get the best out of people. You're not trying to get everyone to see the best of you. You're trying to help inspire them to be great. And I have to tell what Rick always says. It's just fascinating to me. So on that same note, everyone you talk to is starting a business. You're trying to get people to look at your website. You're trying to get people to look at your social media page. You're trying to get viewers. You're trying to get traffic. Rick's the only guy I've ever known who was trying to keep people away from his website because it was so old. He didn't want to be embarrassed by it, so he wouldn't even tell people.
Right.
Thankfully, Joe slept in and revamped.
That's right. Save the day. Yes, I that was my goal. How can I keep people away from my website? I have a chance, but if you go to my website, I'm probably toast here. It was from the last century, not this century. Nothing had changed since the day it was birthed back in the 90s, and it was untouched, and it was pitiful. All right, and so just keep people away. Joe didn't tweak it. Joe nuked it and started over. And today, I would love anybody to come look at my website today. But it's I appreciate your insight, guys, and that's huge. You have to touch hearts first and foremost. You have to have the right motives, and the right motives are, I'm not here to impress you. I am here to draw greatness out of you. And if your motives are pure and your motives are right, you will get asked back. And people will want you in their lives, and they'll want you in their organizations, and they'll want your voice to be heard. But the motives have to be right. And then the social media, I do think, does become a great accelerant. And I've seen that in the last year. I've got some new clients that I haven't worked with before, and some of that is social media driven. It's kind of a new realm for me. It's a new world. It's quite exciting. But Joe, you're very, very good at it. But I appreciate your understanding of it. That it is the add-on piece. It's not the foundational. It's the accelerant that helps it move forward.
And there's a lot of people that abuse marketing techniques and tools, and we all have been victims of that, where you just thought about an idea right when you were online, and then you get every email and every click and every ad, and all the pop-ups are all about whatever you just had on your mind. You don't even remember typing it into your keyboard. Suddenly you're the victim of the barrage of automated tools that we have today. But I love what Seth Godin says. He's one of my favorites when it comes to marketing. He says, ultimately, what you want to have is permission marketing, where you're not force feeding anybody, and you're not barraging them. You're not trying to wear them down until they finally just agree to do whatever it is you're asking them to do, but where they're asking for your information. They're saying, I want to sign up. I want your newsletter. I love what you're doing. I love your product or your service. And then that audience might be way, way smaller, but it's way, way better because you got people who are actually asking for what it is you have to offer. That's your tribe, right, is what he would say. And those are the people who are loyal to you. They will want your business back, and they will be your best PR generator because they're going to tell everybody they know, this is the best thing, that I've ever come across, and they're not going to beat you over the head with marketing tools.
Love it. Joe, we don't have a lot of time left, but John and I, we've been running these questions by you, kind of steering the ship here. Maybe we missed it. Is there anything that we haven't asked you tonight? It's like, man, ask me this. I'd like to talk about this. When are you guys going to get to this? Anything like that, Joe, because it's your night.
Well, I did want to say there was a super important crossroads in my life when I decided to go to graduate school. I'd been out of school. I'd been working at Vanguard for a while, and I was good at academics. I knew I wanted to get a higher level degree. And I was at this crossroads where I was torn between going to seminary and going to business school. And the strife for me internally was, I have a heart for ministry. I feel like I'm a shepherd or a pastor, regardless of what my title is in the organization. That's just the way I'm wired. That's the way I treat people, right? But I didn't know if that meant vocational ministry, a pastor, that was paid to do that, or that's just me shepherding the people in my life. But I did notice from my own experience that a lot of pastors weren't necessarily great leaders to their staff. They're great leaders to their congregation, but they didn't understand the principles of how to make their staff flourish. Tons of turnover, and a lot of my peers who just gave up on ministry altogether because they thought, if that's what ministry looks like, and I don't want to be mistreated, I don't want to work in a toxic environment anymore. And so then you tie that then with my conversation with Wayne Crace about, you don't want to treat people like prostitutes. I thought, what I really want, if I'm going to be a leader, whether it's in ministry or not, whether it's full-time vocational ministry or it's just who I am, I want to understand how to make the people that I work with and that I lead better, so that the organization is better and it's a healthier place. And then I know there's going to be so many great results. And my friend Mike Leckie, who I've known since high school and Rick has met, he went to Pepperdine and he studied organizational development. I didn't even know what that meant really, but he would come back from his schooling, which was ahead of mine, and he would say, man, this was transformational. I'm learning so much about me and self-awareness and what do I bring to the conversation and how change actually happens in leadership. And once you can help a leader become aware of their own issues, then they become so much more empathetic and compassionate. And it was all about business, but from the side of people first, the people that you work with. And if you empower them, then the product and the productivity and the bottom line, all those things will come. But if you start with profitability, then you're going to grind up all the people that work for you in the process. And I was like, that's it. That's really the heart of what I'm looking for, is whatever arena God, whatever doors God opens up, I want to be the leader that starts with people, that is, as Jesus would say, a servant leader, right? Where I start with, I don't care what my title is, what my power, my position is. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to get down in the dirt, and I'm going to wash your feet and make sure that you feel empowered, so that then we all succeed. And that's exactly what that degree was about. And of course, that then has colored all of my experience and has really, I think, has been a catalyst for bringing me to where we are today.
I love it. Joe, I've had the privilege of knowing you since the mid 80s. Okay. That's a long time. You turned my head even as a teenager back in the mid 80s. I had the joy of having you as a student in college. Again, I was just a huge Joe McCarthy fan. I'm so glad we got reconnected. It's been just one of the great joys of my life to have that reconnection with you. But having the perspective of seeing you as a teenager and then as the man that you are now, I'm just so thrilled at how your life has grown and expanded over the years. The very important life lessons you've learned, the insights that you share, and how that at this particular time in life, your life is just expanding and unfolding in some new and remarkable ways, some quick ways. It's very exciting to see this happen. But one of the things that excites me a great deal is that you have so much to offer to all around, and I'm glad that people are discovering who Joe McCarthy is. I don't want you to be a secret from this world, okay? If Joe McCarthy is a secret, then the world is cheated. Okay, Joe McCarthy needs to be known, because you have the ability to help so many, and I see that happening more and more. And so I commend you for it, and I'm thrilled for the world that's getting helped by you, and is going to be getting a lot more help from you in the future. So that's my perspective from the sidelines over here.
Yeah, and I can't echo on the length of our relationship, or even close. But I just wanted to say honestly, thank you. You know, you've been since we've met, you've been a friend, a mentor. We even say it's almost like we're kind of long lost brothers. We're very like minded in a lot of ways, and it's really been great to dig into these conversations. When we have our one-on-one podcast, or when we're just brainstorming, and we're not online, no one's hearing it but ourselves, and it's just we just come up with so many cool things, and you're an inspiration, and like I said, your energy and your knowledge is contagious, and it makes me want to become better and want to become more like you, to be honest, just to grow myself in that way. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that, for that motivation and for our friendship, and really excited to see where the future goes.
Well, I gotta say that the gratitude goes both ways, and I've said throughout my life how important mentoring is. I think everybody should have a mentor, and everybody should be a mentor. And so what I love about the three of us is that that's built right into our consortium here, right? Rick has been a mentor to me. I can mentor to Jon. Jon will in turn, mentor others.
Right.
And I just think that there's such a great value to that, to my individual life, to me as a person, as a dad, as a husband, as a coworker, wherever it is I show up, I know that I've got the support. I've got wisdom coming both ways, in and out. And Rick and I have talked about the Dead Sea in Israel, that if you've only got good stuff coming in, but you got no place for it to go out, everything dies, right? It becomes toxic, right? And so I love that metaphor that mentor pours into your life and your community and your family, but you can't hold on to it, right? It's not just for you. It does nourish you, but you got to pour it out and pass that along, pay it forward, as has been said earlier today, so that the life keeps flowing. It's not just for you, it's to flow through you. And there's a great biblical principle there as well, but I'm grateful for this relationship because it models that, and I benefit from it myself.
Well, it's a winning formula, and it feels great to be a part of it. There's nothing that I'm watching on TV in the evening that's anywhere near as interesting as what happens when the three of us get together and start talking, or when we spend an evening with a leader. It's just the best of the best. So, guys, thank you for jumping in on the journey. It's been incredible. Joe, you bless us every which way. We're so inspired by you and your life. Thank you. And again, the whole world is going to know more and more about Joe McCarthy. You're going to help so many people. Jon, we're looking forward to your time. We're going to just get you behind the mic, and for one night, we're going to discover the real Jon, and that's going to be great as well. But gentlemen, thank you. It's been great. I love having you as friends, spending time with you. I wish you the very best, and we're going to wrap up for tonight, but we'll be back on real soon, and I can't wait for that.
All right. So thank you on behalf of MoJOE Studio, Joe McCarthy, Jon Wierauch, Rick Olson. Tune in for future podcasts called 3Gen as we share life and leadership and faith, and weave it all together, and hopefully make the world a better place. All right. God bless you all.
Thanks.